everybody. Welcome to another edition of Spotlight on CS Ops, where we shine the light brightly on customer success operations folks who are making a difference, who have built our field into the way it is. I'm Matthew Lind out of Austin, Texas, and with my co-host, Jean Naran,
Hey, Matthew.
chiming in from Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada.
That's right.
And I am pleased to introduce our guest today, who's hailing also from Team Austin. So though we are doing the Zoom boxes, he's not far away. In fact, he and I get to hang out quite a bit there in the Zoom. He's got James, but I know him, and I think a lot of folks out there in CS Ops world know him as Toby Shields. His customer success operations expert, has been in the field several years, and we're going to get to ask him more about that. So, Toby, awesome to have you here with us today.
Thank you. I'm super pumped to be here. I love the YouTube channel and everything. I've listened to a lot, especially regarding other people that I know that we know in Austin and things like that. So it's been really awesome to kind of see you put the spotlight on people like us and people getting to kind of tell their story and how they've kind of joined the ranks of CS Ops and stuff like that. So
Super cool. Yeah, thanks again for joining us. Maybe let's jump into it. Let's tell us a little bit about your story. Like, how did you get here, and what was your sort of your journey?
it's pretty eclectic and weird, but for the first part of my career, I was in the military. I joined after a couple of years of college. Great decision, loved it. Was joined the Air Force and then lived overseas. Got to kind of explore the world, deployed a few times and everything like that. But then basically, due to some health issues and things like that, I left the military and was like, what do I want to do with my life? And I lucked out living here in Austin, got to come in on the ground floor at a company called Q2 e-banking, but everyone here in Austin knows it as Q2. They sponsor the big soccer stadium and everything like that here. And but started in support there. Learned a lot, got exposed to a lot of different of the support tools back before Salesforce had all the cool different products like Service Cloud and stuff, just plain Salesforce and trying to figure out how to use that properly. And love support, but it's like break fix all the time and things like that. Got moved into an escalation type role, escalation manager type role, because they're like, Toby never gets upset when people yell at him or anything like that. I'm like, I'm not scared of them. Like, I'm used to military people screaming all the time, so it's no big deal. And got to explore that, and that's where I started learning like the little things really matter and how you talk to a customer, how what they're getting from their point of view, how their frustrations coming across because they're just not understanding or someone didn't really explain things properly, and that got my brain pinging about like how do we do things better, how can we make things not only better from their point of view but internally as well, how do those kind of align, and what's this the synchronicity or however you say that word, I might messed it up, but like the what does that mean. And then as I've moved from support into support management and then into CS, and I did some salesy type things and also been on the renewal side. It's basically all the same thing. Every time I get put in or take a role, like, hey, you're technically savvy, you understand these things. We have all these tools that we're trying to use. How do we make them work together? How do we get the information we need in front of people? How do we build the process that we want it to work and repeatable and scalable? So that's pretty much how I came into this role. And then me being me, I just dug in and I love to read all like as much thought leadership about CS, CX, operations, all those kind of things. So and that's how I met Matthew. I mean, sorry, I have a brother named Matt, and so sometimes I thought, but that's how I met Matthew at Pulse, and I knew he was kind of like a thought leader, and I just talked to him. He was like, whoa, but it was like it's been great, and he's helped mentor me and point me in the right direction on a lot of things as well, and helping me throughout my career.
Oh man, that's so nice of you to say. I mean, Toby and I get to hang out regularly, and I'm just like, I'm just me. That we get to
Totally.
have lunch, and we meet together on a lot of First Fridays, the CS Ops meet up in Austin. So thank you. And
No
it's
problem.
so, I mean, I've seen you influence this community as well. So awesome. Tell us a little bit, like you come out of this support background, the military background. I love
Mhm.
this analogy of people, yelling, chewing you out, whatever. You just letting it roll off your back. But like, how did that transfer into a customer success operations role? I mean, are people still yelling at you? Or is it, you're like, hey, I know how to deal with it relationship wise. Like talk to us about how that prepared you for where you are now.
I believe the conflict resolution part of that, of the military, understanding that people expectation wise, you learn how to read people, or you learn how to ask the questions to understand how they want something done. And then if you don't get it done that way, how do you resolve the conflict that's going to happen, or how do you prepare yourself for that? So that's a lot of what I pulled from the military, and also just kind of following what you say. If you say something, follow up with it. And then in support, what I learned the most, besides break fix and then in the escalation process, is like there's usually some type of foundational reason for either the escalation is happening, or the management of it, or the communication of it, or something. And then it's not always support's fault. It's not always other parts of the business fault, but there's usually something foundationally wise that maybe we could fix it, maybe we can make it better, make it more efficient. And so I used that as through the rest of my career, because it was like sometimes something's broke. It's an escalation, definitely. But sometimes it's an escalation because like the process that we originally created just didn't scale, or wasn't good enough for that particular customer. So how do we go down the path of fixing that in the future? Because there's going to be another customer, maybe the same size or the same industry or things like that. So I kind of that's how it support and all those kind of things uh, shaped my CS point of view. But then also, as we've progressed through CS, things are consolidating too. I was one of those first people to go like, hey, we're all kind of on the same team. We're all kind of doing the same thing from a post sales point of view. So we need to really start talking to each other and understand what each other is doing, so that from the customer point of view, we're all company A. We're not company A CS, company A support. They don't care about that. So it's like if we're all speaking the same language, it makes them feel more comfortable, compared to, I guess, lack of a better word, being siloed, and they're not understanding why we're saying different things. So
I love the trajectory. We've had another person talk to us about being in the military and switching over to this operations. Like I don't know, ops from military operations, it just sounds like a very natural trajectory. So now that you're in ops now, like what is CS ops to you? Like what is it that your focus is on?
so I have a little different definition than most people, because a lot of initial people that I worked with in CS ops were either from a business analyst background, very data specific backgrounds, while I was more from break fix or a system perspective of like, and then let's map out how we want this process to work, and then what needs to connect where, who's responsible for what, and then let's build that out, test it out a little bit. And so at first when I was in CS ops, everybody's like, hey, here's a crazy amount of data, let's slice and dice this, let's do the, and I was not as familiar with that part of it. I've gotten a lot better. Where I presented, where those people were not always able to connect the dots when we were talking, was what I'm talking about, like systems of, oh, okay. Uh, Matthew knows this, that I'm a huge Gainsight fan. But like, I'm like, Gainsight does this, but this particular part of Gainsight can only connect to this system. So we have to figure out how to get this other data here. How are we going to do that? What are we going to do? Those kind of things. And they were not as versed in that type of information. So explaining to managers and directors and even executives of like that different skill set, because they were very like, hey, this is what an operations person does, because of being familiar with either rev ops or sales ops. That's what kind of they were doing. And I'm like, it's not really like that. So that's where in my career, having to kind of explain like, if you want me to do that, I'm probably not your best choice. But if you want me to do this, then I'm probably better. I can align that and do that better. So.
What are some of the like more interesting projects you've worked on, or you've been around this field for a while, right? So
Yeah.
without disclosing all the company secrets of all the places you've worked, but like, what are some of the projects you've worked on, or what are like some of the big themes that you've seen as you've moved around and done your tours of duty? I don't know if I want to make that military comparison. What are some of the themes you've seen as you've moved around, around in CS ops?
One of the big things is like contact data, like everywhere. Not just contacts, but also bit like company or account data, and the structure of it, how you want to do it from the very beginning. Because if you set that up right at the beginning, it costs a lot less money and a lot less time to fix it later. And the same thing with contact data, like building out the muscle memory of your people to understand how important it is to update those things and make sure that they're right. Because if you try to turn it into a big change management program, it usually it's like twisting people's arms and things like that. And because most of uh, the biggest projects I've had to work on were on those two things. Because if you want to do digital CS, if you want to do automation, you want to do any of these things, like you need the right on information, you need the right person that you're supposed to be reaching out to, and those kind of things. So if you set up a system wrong, you're going to get a lot of feedback of like, I don't know, why are you sending me this email? I'm not even supposed to be a part of this. And oh, well, I guess you're the wrong contact. Or the oh, this company, but guess what? This company is actually, it's the European branch of the company, not this, and we sent the whole wrong thing, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's those are usually the biggest things when I've walked into a company and trying to like understand it. Uh, Support when I was in there was a little bit more direct, because you're talking to someone that created a very specific issue and a ticket, and you're reaching out directly to them. So you didn't have to manage that part because you knew who to reach out to. But
Mhm.
from CS, like trying to give someone a book of business or an account book of business, and if the wrong contact when you're trying to introduce yourself during the change or something, uh, that can start you off on the wrong foot. It's all about that champion decision maker point of view. Like if they didn't know that the CSM changed and all of a sudden some new person shows up in a meeting and they're like, "Who are you?" "Well, I've been managing your account for 6 months." Like, what? So those are the kind of things, and talking through those and getting leaders to understand, hey, let's try to fix this as quickly as possible, because it makes things easier in the future, especially scalability wise and digital motions and all those kind of things.
And I always think that those things like account and contact data, it's the nucleus of the business, right? Like if you can't figure out the nucleus, everything else is just going to be a mess on top of that. So like, to your point, like, yeah, who should we be contacting? Like, who is this person? And I don't know, we're going through this at my current company too, but sometimes you end up with like so many representations of the single human, right? You got like
Yes.
10 contact records that represent the same human, and you're emailing them 10 times because someone keeps creating contact records. There's no governance. Yeah, fun projects, like really the foundational stuff of customer success or customer experience.
Yeah. One of the other things that I learned a lesson on, and I've been making sure to kind of talk through any new roles I've been in, is if there's a workflow on the sales side for contacts, or part of like moving through an opportunity in phases, and if there is supposed to be a quality check of this is the technical contact, or this is making sure at least whatever CRM you're using, there is another check of that. So it's not just using the list of contacts that is already there, that this is actually the person that's the technical contact or anything. Because hey, I get it, sales wants to push through, make their money and things like that. But if you just because it was a technical contact for the last deal doesn't mean it is for this one. And if you put that person in there and that's who you're sending all your data information to, and trying to schedule you know, professional services stuff and onboarding and all those, and it's just going to the wrong person and they're just not doing it. Then you give onboarding, CS, implementations, all these people, they're trying spinning their wheels trying to find the right person. When just gave the right contact, it would have been all this stuff that we built will be working better. And so that's the conversation. Like how do you present that to a sales leader, because they want, you know, deal velocity, they want it to be fast, but yeah,
they don't get paid on contact quality, right?
Yeah.
Sales never gets paid on contact quality. At least no one I've ever met in sales gets paid on that. I'm waiting for, and maybe this is a business that already exists. Maybe the three of us should start it. But I'm waiting for someone to take AI and apply it to contact quality. And I know there are some businesses that like hydrate contacts or make them better, but I'm like, I want full blown AI. Like, can you figure out for me based on communications and publicly available information and maybe even some sentiment analysis on messages we're trading, like who the best person is for the next message or the next stage of the journey I want to take a customer to. So there's my quick little pitch.
I agree with you. When I believe that there's a lot of those for the sales side, and I totally get it, because that's who you need to talk to complete a sale. But when we have some of that same type of rigor, or like on the post sales side of really understanding all those contacts, and not just because something changed in LinkedIn, but really pulling data from different places and kind of helping you build personas instead of you just kind of guessing and things like that. I think that's going to be a game changer too, because especially with all the digital emotions that everybody wants to be built, and also people don't really read emails all the time, you know, like, so you need another way of reaching out to people, and because some products don't have the ability to present in the product right away and things like that. So I'm looking forward to, I mean, if B2C, like if all these companies have figured out how to do it from that point of view, and understand who to talk to when and all these things, we B2B should also be able to do it, hopefully in the future, pretty quickly too. So
Yeah, I agree. We're like B2B is always often like behind the eight ball a little bit, or behind the times. But yeah, once the motion has been pushed out through a B2C motion, you know that eventually B2B will catch up, right? Like we're getting way more digital, we're getting way more like recommendation apps and tools. So I couldn't agree more. You've touched on, like, you know, data is a huge component of like CS ops. You also touched on like process. Do you have a methodology for like how you approach your projects or your various initiatives that you work with the business on?
I try to ask a lot of questions of the stakeholders, because sometimes they have a vision of something that might not be possible, or might not be the best way forward with what we have right then. And ask that question. If this is your vision and this is what you want, we might need to buy a tool. Do you have the authority of us to do this? If you do, then okay. If you don't, then that's a whole other conversation we need to have with leadership. Or just sometimes that's not really possible right now. Can we put it on the back burner and circle back to it? But here is an idea I think that might work. And if I don't have an idea, I do a lot of research. I do a lot of reading. I try to figure out what's possible, what isn't possible. I try to not tell people no, or stakeholders no, because I understand they're trying to fix something in the business, or they're trying to, you know, they're being pushed. But that's one of the reasons we're here, is to, like, we understand how all these different things are supposed to work, and all these. So this is why I'm giving you that type of feedback. It's not, I'm just, hey, I don't want to do that. And so that's kind of how I hand it. I do ask a lot of questions. I do a lot of research, and then I try to put together either a presentation or some type of way to present a couple of different versions of something. Here's the really fast. But it's going to be hard to scale, and all these other. It's slower, but we can scale it. And then in the future, there will be the ability to upgrade it in different ways of this. So I used to sometimes give 3, but 2 usually is like the middle ground is most people would rather just, hey, here's the fast, here's a scale kind of version of that. And then
Yeah, I like that.
uh, and then make sure that whoever makes that decision, I have that somewhere in my notes. That if they wanted it the fast, or and then so when it gets brought up, like, what do you mean we can't scale it, or it's going to cost us money? Hey, this was the decision because we needed to
Yeah.
fix
What do
it.
you mean that has to be torn down now that we want to roll it out to another segment? Like, well,
Yeah,
let the record show
yes.
that on this day at
So,
this
and
time,
that is definitely a military thing. You make sure that you're, you know,
that
when someone makes a decision, you know who made it, so you don't someone out of nowhere comes like, what's going on, kind of thing. So,
it
um,
occurs to me that some of your what you said earlier of like I tried to in your support world I tried to figure out what the issue really was. Like, okay, the customer is screaming, but they're frustrated. But the issue is not that they're frustrated. The issue is that they feel like they haven't been heard for the last 6 months and they're not getting their money's worth. And so you're digging down into that issue, and it seems like that same philosophy is applying to how you approach projects or CS ops initiatives, which is like, okay, I know what you asked for, but why did you ask for that? Like, what is the thing we're trying to solve? What's kind of underneath this veneer of a question or a request that you've made?
yeah, I mean, we're customer ops, and that big word in there is customer, and I try to like think about it from their point of view and everything, because you don't want to internally, you have customers. I want them to not have to point and click and do a lot of extra stuff too. But from the business customer point of view, I also feel that way too, because it's like, hey, if we can get as much information as we can from you at the beginning of whatever interaction that we have, that means there's no what I call popcorn emails, back and forth messaging, things like that. There's no, like, you don't feel like I've asked something multiple times that someone else has asked, and all these kind of things, because that is, you what's the saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. That's literally what happens when your first impression from post sales and you're asking a bunch of questions that sales already did. That information should be somewhere, those different things like that. So and the same from the support perspective, like giving them as much information as possible when they're trying to figure something out, because most people would rather just figure it out than have to create this crazy ticket and put all this information in. And but if they do, then they want to know that someone heard them, and and things like that. Same when you're a CSM, when someone gives you feedback about something, or a product, feedback about, hey, or a feature request or something, they just want to know someone heard them, and that, hey, we're looking at it, and if it can't be on the roadmap, then what's the reason? And those kind of things. Like, so that's how I look at it. I'm like, if you were on the opposite side, how would you feel? What would you want to know and to hear, and what the cadence would be, and all that kind of stuff.
Super cool. The I'm curious, like, so you've been at it for a while, you've got this, tremendous amount of experience and background in a variety of fields. Like, is there anything that, like, before you started like CS ops, and maybe, you know, even earlier on in your career, like before you joined the army or something, is there anything you wish that you had known back then about this field? Like, would you have jumped in sooner, or is there something that comes to mind that you wish you had known earlier on?
I think I really wish I would have known that just data analysis, or data uh, slicing, dicing, or those kind of things. That BI was as important as it would be later, because I would have jumped both feet in, and I love data. I can look at it, understand it, I can tell a story with it. It's more of like really getting into like, hey, here's, let's model this to kind of show these things. And I would have loved that, because if you can do that, that makes the story that you're telling, even though you're showing some data points, but if you can really model it and really present it in a visual way with that hits hard about your point, that's a game changer, especially when you're talking like senior director, VP level, or if you get called in front of the board for some reason, that's what really matters, rather than just, oh, I think I trust Toby because he's telling us a good story, but I don't know what all the data is yet. If I can tell you the story and show you visually what I'm talking about, that's what it is. And I know business is supposed to be like that, but you would be, or I've learned in my career, not every decision is made with that kind of data and looking at it from that point of view. So
I think, boy, I'm going to step in here. We only have to look at the United States political system to know that some of our decisions are not necessarily made on data. Some of them are made on other things, and I will leave it right there. As we wrap up, Toby, give us a prediction on what you see ahead for CS Ops.
that's a open-ended, holy cow.
Of course, it is.
I have a lot of opinion, but I think that kind of what I touched on a little bit earlier. I do believe that like post sales, CS, CX, however you want to call it, is going to start aligning, maybe not in pods, but like in a perspective of like how, hey, this group of people are subject matter experts about this, say, enterprise. And if we have support, we have a CSM or TAM, we have professional services, we have implementation people, they're all have this book of business or this amount of accounts or something like that. And if all of them can communicate and understand, and they're all looking at it from their point of view, but then sharing that information and learning from each other, that makes that team like super powerful. I wasn't in the Navy, but I've heard that like part of the people that are on submarines, they learn each other's systems and things like that because of what happens if someone gets sick. You're under the water, you can't go anywhere, like things still need to be done. So I've always thought about like in the future, that's kind of where we're going to go. People are starting to do that now. I know that like on the sales side, they have sales pods or they have like regional pods, and they kind of look at it from that point of view. But I do believe in the future, especially with AI, having a lot of information at your fingertips, having the ability to kind of have a system that keeps the voice of something very centered and things like that. Teams would probably be moving toward that. Because it makes sense. Like I don't want anybody to lose their job. I don't want any of that stuff. But because of the economy and things have been consolidating and consolidating. Pretty soon, like you're going to start having to ask people that really don't have any expertise to do these different things. Why not just have them all on the same team, learning from each other, and then you can have these answers? Because the only reason I have a lot of the experience I have is because I got to move around to these different positions, and that's why my point of view is the way it is. Like I know there's not a lot of people that got to do support and be a renewal person and be a CSM and all the, so that's why I'm like I try to go, hey, it does work. You get to understand the business at a different level and be able to present findings and stuff like that from each point of view. And so
Love it. Got to break walls and get more orchestrated, right? Like, got to start singing a little bit closer together, more aligned. So I absolutely love that.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, Toby, it's been a pleasure. As we talked about, you and I get to talk, and I'm so pleased that today a whole bunch of other people got to meet you as well, and eavesdrop on our conversations. So thank you for what you contribute to my journey and to the journey of our audience and to CS Ops in general. It's been a pleasure having you today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. Thank you both for like creating this whole the YouTube channel and everything like that, because it's important. Like there's people that when I say I do CS Ops, they're like, I don't even understand what that is, and you have to kind of explain it. So if more people can see the channel and more people are exposed, and then there's people within the business that really don't know what it is either, and they're learning, and they might be like me from a whole different world and want to join it and give us a new perspective and change things even, or accelerate change even faster. So thank you both for what you do and inviting me on, and I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. It's been great to have you.